Hi everybody, and welcome to this video on the flight or fight response specific to physiological responses as part of the emotion topic in Stage 1 psychology. Let's get started. Okay, so a quick recap. Our physiological responses refers to the changes in our bodies that occur when we experience an emotion. So some are similar for different emotions, however. I said this in a previous video. So for example, fear and rage both have an increased heart rate, but they have different skin temperatures. So when we're very, very angry or we're in a rage, our temperature will increase, whereas when we're terrified, our temperature will decrease. Different hormones are secreted and different parts of the brain are activated. So there are some similarities in terms of physiological responses for different emotions, and then there's obviously differences as well. So the main one that we focus on in Year 11 psychology is the emotion of fear. So when we experience extreme fear, our body undergoes several physiological responses to help us survive. Now, some of these are not noticeable. So, for example, speeding up of the metabolism, the liver releases extra glucose, our breathing rate may increase, our digestion will slow down, our pupils dilate, and our saliva dries up and we sweat. So some of these we obviously do notice and some of them we don't. So we would obviously notice the breathing rate and our saliva drying up and us sweating, but our body will also do involuntary responses that we don't notice. Now, these are all very, very common symptoms of the flight or fight response. So the flight or fight response is represented here on this scale, all right, and this is our level of awareness. So here is normal resting levels, how we are most of the time each day. Lowest level of arousal is sleep, and the highest level of arousal is stress. It's important to note that when we talk about arousal, we're talking about how stressed someone is. So the higher the arousal, the more stressed out they are. And as we can see, the flight or fight response is the highest level of arousal we can be while still conscious. So it's the highest physiological rate we can be in terms of a stress response. So the flight or fight response is the body's physiological reaction to a threat. So the body prepares itself to confront the threat, so fight, or run away, flight. So the body will undergo several physiological responses all at once to help us to fight for longer or run away quicker. Now, sometimes there is a third component called fright, meaning we freeze. So we don't do anything, the body and the brain can't process what's going on, and people just freeze and stay there. So this is a survival mechanism that we are all born with, so it's innate, and it's a survival mechanism. So when we get a jump scare in a film, our body will automatically go into flight or fight mode. Now, usually, and hopefully in most cases, when we go through flight or fight, it isn't a life-threatening situation. So again, it's a jump scare in a film or something like that. But our body will prepare us nonetheless because it is a survival mechanism. So the system responsible for this is called the autonomic nervous system, or the ANS. So our autonomic nervous system controls functions that are not voluntary. So again, things like heart rate, production of sweat, breathing in our lungs, stomach functions, etc. So the autonomic nervous system has two divisions, or two sections, in other words, our sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So our sympathetic nervous system, it responds to stress and speeds up the body's functioning. So it's this division of our ANS that activates our flight or fight response. So it's responsible for our adaptive response to stress, known as, again, flight, fright, or fight. So when we're exposed to a threat, this system speeds up heart rate, increases blood pressure and blood flow to the muscles, our pupils widen, we will perspire more, so again we'll sweat more, and our respiration, breathing will increase, and our digestion decreases. So that energy that's, usually there for digesting food, that energy is needed elsewhere in our muscles, and that's often why when we get a really bad fright, we will feel very nauseated, and some people may defecate on themselves. It's actually quite common. Now, that's all well and good. The sympathetic nervous system keeps us alive, and it activates our flight or fight response and enables us to get out of danger if we need to. But just as important as that is our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the other section of our ANS. And this is responsible and important for slowing down our body's functioning. So it's responsible for the maintenance of our body's energy. So our sympathetic nervous system, if I go back, speeds everything up. Our parasympathetic nervous system slows everything back down again to resting levels. So the parasympathetic nervous system also assists with heart regulation, digestive processes return to normal, as well as returning the body to a state again of rest following arousal or flight or fight. So the ability for the body to balance the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is important for maintaining adaptive and healthy functioning. The body is not built to sustain a flight or fight response all the time. It should only be when necessary and for very short bursts. If we were in flight or fight mode all the time, the body wouldn't be able to handle it and our systems would shut down. So our parasympathetic nervous system, even though it brings us back down to normal resting levels, it's very important that that happens. So here is a visual representation of what goes on in the body when the sympathetic division is activated versus the parasympathetic. So just to quickly summarize to end this video, the sympathetic, when we are in flight or fight mode, speeds everything up. Our pupils dilate. There's no effect on our tear glands. We've got weak stimulation of salivary, so we get a dry mouth, in other words. Our heart rate accelerates, dilates our bronchi, so we breathe very quickly. It inhibits stomach mobility and secretion, inhibits pancreas and adrenals, so in other words, that energy is needed elsewhere, and digestion decreases, and that links into intestinal mobility as well, and it relaxes our bladder. So that's again often why people will feel very, very sick or very nauseated or defecate on themselves. Then we have the parasympathetic division, which does the opposite, calms us back down again. So our pupils return to normal size. Our tear glands may be stimulated, so people often cry after they get a very bad fright. That's totally normal. Strong stimulation of salivary flow. So again, we've got more saliva in our mouth or normal saliva in our mouth again. Our heart rate will go down. Breathing returns to normal, and energy is then brought back to our digestive system to resume its thing. And again, it contracts our bladder so we can control our bladder as needed. Okay guys, so that sums it up for this video. If you have any questions, obviously let me know. Otherwise, happy revising.